Hi everyone, Jamie Humphries here for Six String Alliance, and today we are taking a look at Paranoid Android by Radiohead. So I recently took part in a collaborative performance as well as a short analysis of this track over on Produce Like a Pro with my good friend Warren Hewitt. Some of you may or may not know, Warren and I work together a lot. We're sort of working towards the launch of the Six String Alliance Guitar Academy, which is getting ever closer. The website's under construction now. And we decided that this would be quite a good track to focus on here on Six String Alliance, dig a little bit deeper into the track, something a little bit different. I haven't done any lessons on here for a while, and I did look at some Radiohead previously, breaking down some of my favourite riffs from the bends. Now, as if by magic, I'm now clutching two books. Yes, I thought I'd show you these. I think I showed these before, but for those of you that are new to my channel, my first sort of professional jobs was writing these books. I wrote two Radiohead books, Radiohead Volume 1 and Radiohead Volume 2. I'll just put those in camera there. These aren't available anymore, sadly, but I wrote all the transcriptions. I hand wrote them and then used to go to a studio in Romford and record everything there. It was all done analog. It was all done to tape, trying to reproduce those sounds without the help of the internet, being able to read up about all the effects and watch performances and stuff. So those books are kind of okay. I went back and revisited the transcriptions a bit. I also did a Radiohead DVD for Lick Library, and I watched a bit of that. There were certain things about, especially the acoustic guitar and some of Jonny Greenwood's picking parts that never really felt right to me. And thanks to using Isotope RX10, being able to isolate the instruments and also watching YouTube. In particular, there's a fantastic performance of this track from the Jools Holland show. It really shows everything in detail. It really exposed a lot going on with both Thom Yorke and Jonny Greenwood's picking hands when they're playing the rhythm parts. You could see there was a lot more movement, so there was a lot more going on. I always felt that they were just like these, the melody was being picked, but there was a lot more going on in between. So it's been really nice to go back and revisit this track and hopefully do a little bit of a better interpretation. This is my interpretation of the track. I've kind of mixed together the recorded version and parts that aren't really that clear, even on the isolated tracks, kind of buried within the mix. There's a lot of ambient effects and things going on. I've referenced this 1997 Jools Holland video because I always feel that if you're going to watch a band play a track and use it as a reference, it's always good to watch a performance from that era because they're more than likely going to play it more like the original recording. If I watch a performance from more recent years, the song has maybe evolved in the way that they're going to play it. The song will change. So, I've kind of put a mixture together and, it's based on the original recording, but there are elements of that live recording for bits that were a little bit inaudible. But we'll talk a little bit more about the transcription as we start to work through the parts. So what I've done is I've presented a transcription for you. Click the link in the description of this video to get the transcription. I'd advise having the transcription when we work through this because there's so many parts. I'm not going to be sitting here telling you each note to play. We're just going to be demonstrating the parts and talking about what's going on. So make sure you download the tab. Now, for the first part of the track, the sort of first verse and the first chorus of section 1, I've shown all three guitar parts. So I've shown the acoustic guitar parts played by Thom Yorke. I've shown Jonny Greenwood sort of supporting picked phaser parts. And then when we get into the chorus, I've included Ed O'Brien's pitch shift parts as well. But then when we get into the second verse, because the acoustic guitar is playing pretty much the same thing, I've focused mainly on what Jonny Greenwood is playing, and also the same for the second chorus as well. Jonny Greenwood plays a slightly different part. And as the song progresses, in some places I've showed two guitar staves. For section 2, for instance, with the acoustic guitar, there's some little picking parts played by Jonny. There's these single notes, just sporadic single notes played by Ed. And I've shown them. But when we get into the heavier sections, although Ed O'Brien is doubling up the riff that Jonny Greenwood is playing, I've kind of switched over to one stave there so that you can combine the two guitar parts to enable you to play the chord riffs as well as the single note stuff. There's some pretty crazy stuff that Jonny Greenwood does when that real kind of heavy, aggressive section kicks in. When we get to section 3, which is that kind of mellow Baroque inspired section, I'm just showing that as the acoustic guitar. And then for the outro section, which is section 4, when the tempo kicks up and the dynamic of the track rises again, then we're just going to be focusing on one guitar. We're just going to be focusing on Jonny Greenwood's riffs and his solo towards the end of the track. So I've shown some different examples of parts, but really, you know, if I was going to be playing this, I'd sort of be playing a mixture. Well, it depends really, you know, to play the acoustic part and the electric part. Maybe you'd have a guitar with a piezo, or you've got an acoustic simulator or something, so you could play a little bit of the sort of Thom Yorke part and then swap into the Jonny Greenwood parts. It's up to you, but the main focus for sort of the latter part of the track is going to be Jonny's playing. There's some astonishing guitar playing on this track. So let's start looking at some parts. We're going to look at the acoustic guitar parts first. We'll break it down into the 3 different guitars. We'll look at the Thom Yorke acoustic parts first. Then we will look at the Ed O'Brien parts, and then we'll finish off with Jonny Greenwood. So we're going to look at section 1 of the track. This is going to be the verse and the chorus parts. So let's kick off by taking a look at the verse part, and I'll play it through for you first of all. Okay, so this is a deceptively tricky part. And when I originally transcribed this for both the books and the original DVD that I did, I kind of transcribed it a bit literally, every single sort of open string, which would make it pretty much impossible to remember. The thing that I think is really important about this is just to take a section. It's all about playing that melody and then picking off of the root notes, as well as including open strings. So to make it easier to digest, I've just taken one portion of the riff, of the part, and just repeat that. And then just let your picking hand naturally make variations. You know, I probably, when I played it through them, hit open strings as I was changing position that are different to the tab. I'm just playing it. So with that in mind, I would very much sort of treat the transcription as more of a guide. Otherwise you'll just end up making it more complicated than it really has to be. You know, when you watch Thom Yorke play it live, he's pretty much strumming it. So, I think that, treat the transcription as a guide and just enjoy the essence of the part and just try and get that down. So anyway, the chords that we're playing, we're going to be playing a C minor chord, and we always have this repeating melodic theme in the top of the chord. So C minor. Then we drop down and we have the B flat in the bass, so a C minor over B flat. Then we have an F9 with the same melody in the top of the chord. Then we have like an F9 with an A in the bass. And then the C minor with the B flat in the bass. Okay, so that's it really stripped down. But then we're adding in more movement and more notes with the picking hand. So we have, for the C minor chord, there's that open A string there. Next we have the B flat in the root, and we're pedaling off of the open D. Then we have an open string. Let's put that together. Then we have the F9 pedaling off the roots. Then we have the open A and D. Then we play that the G string, sorry. And then you're pedaling off of the B flat root note. So, and then I played an open A. It could be any open string that you choose when you change position. So let's just play through that part slowly. For the next section, we're going to play a G minor chord. Okay, you see again, you're pedaling off of the root note. Then you're going to pedal off of an open A to an open D. Okay, put that together. Okay, I played an open D at the end there to get me into the next chord, which is an E minor 7 flat 5. Okay, with some strumming. Then drop down to an E7 sus 4, and then an E minor 7. Occasionally on the original recording, you hear the low E come in if he sometimes strikes it. So let's just put that together. Okay, let's play through that entire verse progression slowly. Here we go. Now, it's really important to keep a nice, relaxed picking hand. And it's hard to get that movement, where you're jumping over, jumping over the strings. So really take care with that. So that is the verse progression that I've chosen to isolate and to use. So as I said, it changes. There are different combinations of open strings, but I think if you take that part, that will work great. And then just let your picking hand naturally pick out other notes as you get more into the part. And obviously that part repeats. Okay, so now we're on to the chorus section. This is the next part of part 1 of the song. And again, we have a little picking figure that you hear being played by all 3 guitarists. You hear it on Thom Yorke's acoustic part. Jonny Greenwood's doing it with like a phaser guitar, and Ed O'Brien's doing it with a whammy pedal with the guitar set an octave higher. So this is the theme. So you're going to be playing a G minor 6th chord. Then we're playing an F major 7th with an added 6th. Quite a hard chord to fret that. You're playing your thumb at the 1st fret, and you've got to mute out the D string. And again, it's that. Then we've got an E dominant 7th chord. And then we have a little leading chord, which is a D over F sharp. And then we go around the progression again. Now, that's it again in its most basic form. And when I originally transcribed this, I kind of felt that it sounded too sparse, but I couldn't really hear what was going on. You have to bear in mind that when I originally transcribed these books, I had a thing called an Akai Riffomatic, which was a really low bit rate sampler. I think I could sample something like 20 seconds of music and play it back and isolate it, but it was pretty crude and it wasn't great. So watching the Jools Holland performance, you can really see that when Thom Yorke is playing, he's just strumming. He's just strumming the part. But on the original recording, you can clearly hear that the acoustic guitar is picking that melody. So again, what I've chosen to do is fuse the parts together. So I've incorporated a little bit more strumming with the picking. Like I said, this is kind of my interpretation. Hopefully it works for you. And again, use the tab as a guide. I think these things are kind of horrible to read. I've written it out in quite a basic form, just giving you that kind of thing. But obviously feel free to sort of let your picking hand do a little bit more. So I'm going to play through the chorus for you now so you can hear my interpretation of it. Obviously, like I said, follow the tab, use the tab as a guide and have a little bit of fun with it. Just make sure you get that little melodic theme and then let your picking hand fill in the gaps with some rhythmic strumming on the lower portions of the chords. And also when you're strumming, try and, sort of separate the chord a little bit, playing between the lower register and the higher register. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what's going on with the chorus. As I said, it's a combination of what I heard, what was decipherable on the original recording, and what you can clearly see Thom Yorke doing on that epic Jools Holland Later performance from 1997. Okay, let's just mention the second verse. The second verse is the same, but we just have this little chromatic lead in from D at the 10th fret, dropping down to a D flat and then to the C. So you'll come out of that E7th chord from the chorus. Just putting that little chromatic run in there, just leading into the first chord. So that second verse is exactly the same parts. It just, as I said, has that little chromatic run. Following on from the second verse, we have a second chorus, which again is played exactly the same as the first chorus. Now we're going to take a look at section 2. And for this section, we've modulated into the key of A minor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this into different sections because we've got some different time signatures to deal with here, as well as some slightly unorthodox fingerings for some very basic chords. So I'm going to play the first portion for you now. Here we go. 3, 4. Okay, so here we're in A minor. We're playing this little pattern. Again, it's all about the picking hand, trying to keep that sort of constant 16th note rhythm going. There is some 8th and 16th note combinations at the beginning of the riff. Then we have this pull off. Okay, and then again. Okay, following on from that riff, we then go into a new chord section, and this section is over a 7/8 time signature. Think about when you're counting the bars of 4, you're still going to be keeping that same 8th note pace or pulse, sorry. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So that's 8 8th notes to a bar. When we go to 7, you still can keep that same 8th note pulse. You're just 1 8th note short. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Okay, so it should feel quite a natural transition. I really like 7. I think it's a really cool odd time signature to experiment with. You can still kind of get some cool grooves going with it. It doesn't feel too awkward, even though it's a group of 7. So we're going to start off with a C major chord. Now, I mentioned that there's some unusual fingerings. obviously, when you play bar chords, such as that, sometimes we abbreviate chords and we just play the top portion of the chord, muting out the A string. Thom Yorke kind of does that, but he actually brings his third finger over onto the A string as opposed to the D string. So he's muting out the D string. So you'll play this, the C major. Then you're adding your little finger to turn that into a C sus. Then you drop that shape down with the root on the 4th fret, but add your little finger on the B. So you get an A flat 6th, and we're going up to a B flat. Okay, just take care with the muting. It's quite hard to mute out on those chords. And we finish off by going C, down to a B, down to a B flat, and then down to the A flat, and we keep the rhythm going. So you get like... So following on for the 7/8 chords, that little rundown when we land on that A flat chord, we then lead into the riff again, but this time minus the pull-offs. Okay, then we're back into the 7/8 time section with the chords. Okay, and then we go into the riff again, and at that point is when Ed and Jonny join in with their crushing guitar tones, and it starts getting really aggressive. And the dynamic of that section really picks up. Something else to bear in mind if you are going to play the acoustic part is that part continues, that riff and that chord section. But for some reason, when they do the little chord rundown during the solo sections, they land on an A. You can clearly hear Ed O'Brien playing an A chord. So I played an A during the performance, even though during the other sections, it's an A flat leading back in. So I don't know whether that was just something that happened when they recorded or whether they intentionally did that. And at the end of the track, they end on an A chord as well. So just bear that in mind if you are going to play the acoustic guitar from the start to the finish of the track. Okay, let's just play through that example, that fragment of the section 2. Obviously, as I said, it continues for the guitar solo. So I'm just playing it from the start of that section up to the start of the guitar solo, which is how I have presented it to you on the transcription. Here we go. Obviously, at that point is when you hear those slide downs and we go into the heavy riff. So now to conclude our look at the Thom Yorke parts, basically, as I've said before, all those parts repeat. Those riffs, the single note riffs, the chords all repeat throughout section 2. And those are the riffs that we hear again in section 4. So we only need to look at section 3 now, which is that sort of Baroque sort of long vocal harmonies, those sort of vocal drones with that drop down in dynamic and tempo, the sort of very progressive, almost Floydian sounding section. So for this section, we are playing just some very light strum chords, but the chords are interesting here. We've got some nice movement going on. We've got a C minor chord to a G over B. That's quite awkward because Thom uses his little finger to play the B string. When I play that, I must admit, I just play it like so. It's a little bit easier to get to. Or the way that Thom plays it. It's quite awkward to get into that chord. Then we have B flat, again we're using the same voicings, B flat to A major. D minor bar chord, using a D minor shape to an A major shape, E major shape for A major. So here we're back to D minor. And then we have a D minor with a C in the bass. There's a very sparse voicing to take care with the mutes. You're playing the B string, the D string, and the low E. Okay, so you get... Now we play a B flat chord. An F with an A in the bass, a G minor, an F major, and then we're playing E7 to E7 sus4 back to E7, A major to A sus4 and back to A. And then we go around that progression 2 more times. So I'm just going to play it through for you once so you get the idea. Here we go. So you will play round that chord progression that I just played another 2 times. You play the progression as I showed it to you a total of 3 times. We do have a 4th time, which has a slightly different ending. So I'm going to play it through for you now. Let's have a listen. Okay, yes, so as you can see, we had a little different ending. Basically, we played all the way around the chord progression. When we get to that E7th chord to E sus, back to E7th, we just repeat that bar. And then we pick up the riff that we saw in section 2. So that's basically the start of section 2. So you will play around that chord progression a total of 4 times, but on the 4th time, we eliminate the A major to A sus chord. We play the E7 to E7 sus chord bar twice, and then you will go into that riff, which introduces section 4. Okay, so that concludes our look at the Thom Yorke acoustic guitar parts. Now it's time for us to take a look at some electric guitar parts. So now let's start taking a look at some of the electric guitar parts, and we're going to start off by looking at some of the Ed O'Brien parts. Just before we get into the parts we're going to look at, let's talk a little bit about gear. During this period, Ed was using an Eric Clapton signature Strat. He now has his own signature Strat, but the Clapton Strat seems to be a guitar that he gravitated to a lot during this period. and you can see him playing a Strat on the Jules Holland Performance. In terms of amplifiers, he was using an AC30, a Vox AC30, as well as the Mesa Tremorverb amp. Now, both Ed O'Brien and Jonny Greenwood are known for expansive amounts of effects, and I'm not going to make huge lists and read them off. But for this track, the effects that Ed would be using are namely the whammy pedal, pitched an octave higher, plus the Marshall Shredmaster pedal. All three of the guys in the band were using them during this period. So, to reproduce a ballpark tone, I'm using my Music Man, Uniball Music Man Silhouette Special, partly for the whammy bar and for the hot rail in the bridge. The Clapton Strat had the lace sensor, so I wanted to have something with a little bit of poke to it, but also for a little bit of the sort of visual element, being able to identify what parts are what, so playing a Strat style guitar. And I'm running into the Boogie Fillmore 50, and I'm using the Cab Clone IR, the Mesa Cab Clone IR with the A1x12 impulse response. Let's talk about the front end first of all. I'm using the Wampler Ego 76 compressor, mainly for a little bit of tonal dressing, just blending that in. It's got that nice parallel compression where you can blend in the clean and the compressed, with a compressed sound to the clean sound. So it just lifts the sound a bit and also helps even out some of the clean parts. For the crunch sounds, I'm using a Marshall Governor. Didn't want to have something heavy metal. I wanted more of that sort of classic drive, but cranked right up, you can get sort of quite grungy sounds out of it. In terms of effects, I have got a whammy pedal. I've got an original whammy 1, but I'm doing all of the effects. Well, I do use the whammy for a bit of the Jonny Greenwood stuff later, but everything that you hear is coming from the Eventide H90, which is a phenomenal effects unit. And as there's lots of different effects, I kept it nice and simple and done it all with that one box. I'm running that in the dual mode, so I'm running it 4 cables. So certain effects, such as the whammy effect that you'll hear on this sound, is going to be into the front of the amp, but then the reverbs are being added after. Now, I'm not using the send and return of the Mesa combo. I'm basically sending a signal out of Cab Clone IR. I'm going in to the one of the other inputs of the H90 and then coming out in stereo. So I'm adding reverbs and delays after my impulse responses, which is how I run my bigger rig. And this is a great way if you like to use an amp with an impulse response loader live. This is a great way of turning a mono amplifier into a stereo rig. Okay, so this is the chorus part. I'll play it through for you first of all. Here we go. So we're holding this shape up at the 15th fret G and the B and the 12th fret top E. We're outlining the G minor 6th chord. Then we drop down to play the 14th fret of the G string, so you're outlining the F major 7th with the added 6th. Then we drop that A note down another semitone, so that you are playing a G sharp. So now we're outlining the E dominant 7th chord. We raise that G sharp up to an A to outline that D over F sharp, and then we play around the figure again. Now we hear this part again in the second chorus, but the final time we wind up by just playing a single A note at the start of section 2. So you get this. Okay, and then that A note is played again later on during the first part of section 2 over the little sort of chuggy riff. Jonny Greenwood introduces a very tight palm muted phaser tone, and then we have Ed just playing, you know, just adding to that sort of soundscape approach and just building the sound of that section by adding these little bits of color, utilizing the effects. Okay, so now we're on to the next Ed O'Brien section, and this is during section 2, and this is the heavy guitar section. Now, I haven't specifically written Ed's part out. At this point, I've sort of swapped over really to just showing one guitar. Ed and Jonny are doubling this part together, except Jonny does some kind of weird stuff with the kill switch, whilst Ed is just holding a single note. So I'm going to show you how he plays it. Like I said, I haven't notated this, but it's pretty much the same part. But this is then followed by a chord part, which I have notated. So I'm going to kick in the governor, as I said. Both Jonny and Ed were using Marshall Shredmasters around this time. And I found that the governor, although it hasn't, my friend had a Shredmaster, although that had a little bit more of a higher gain sort of scoop sound, this works really well, and it gives you that sort of slightly trashy sounding overdrive. It has the right frequencies in it, has the right amount of drive. I don't really want to go for sort of a heavy metal style drive. It's a very sort of different overdrive that they use within this riff. Okay, for this section, we start off with those sliding from approximately the 17th. And they sort of pull off to an open E. It's quite an awkward, angry sounding slide. Then we slide in again, and we go round that riff that we've already seen being played by the acoustic guitar. But when we get to the end of the riff, Ed just holds that D note. And sometimes he's bending the note, sometimes he's adding a lot of sort of aggressive vibrato with the bar. We go around again. And then we have the 7/8 section. Here we start off with a C5 power chord. And then he adds the second finger down just to play the major thirds. You get... And then you play the A flat major to the B flat major and an F major. So it sounds like this. And then he drops down chromatically. This is where there's a slight sort of grey area of whether it's an A flat or an A, because he plays an A. He goes... Okay, and you can hear that there was sort of some vibrato, some bends, lots of slides. You know, feel free to experiment with that if you're going to take that route with the riff and play it the way that Ed plays it. As I said, in the transcription, I've shown Jonny's variation with the kill switch and then into the solo, but it's only a slight variation, so I thought it was worth mentioning. And obviously to finish off, you got that little chromatic rundown before we conclude the part on the F major chord. Okay, the next time we hear Ed's guitar is during section 4, and that is basically back to this riff again, but the tone has changed. It sounded like it was a lot more kind of slappy and single coily, that sort of... Now, there's some kind of high part there that really jumped out when I was moving the kind of mix around within Amazing Slow Downer. And I could hear this note, so I sort of played, I included the A root note to give it some sort of, there was something else going on, but I couldn't really hear. So I just sort of played, because that worked over the A chord. So a little bit of artistic license with that bit, but it's kind of in the spirit of what he's playing. And then we're just back into that section. And then to conclude the track, we just got the chromatic run down to the A major chord. Now we're going to take a look at Jonny Greenwood's parts, and there are some epic parts for you to learn. There's some really nice textual playing, as well as some very aggressive rhythm playing, use of the kill switch, plus that sort of anti-guitar hero, aggressive guitar solo. In fact, there's two. There's that really cool final solo with the envelope filter. Now, in terms of equipment, Jonny famously used a 1990 Fender Telecaster Plus, which had the dual lace sensors in the bridge. And his has been fitted out with a kill switch. And obviously there was a signature version of that Telecaster released. Now, I have a couple of tellies. I have my Jerry Donahue 90s telly, which really is more like a Richie Kotzen Telecaster. I had it turned into a Richie Kotzen Telecaster before you could get a Richie Kotzen telly, after seeing him with Poison in 93. I had the pickups all done. Even Richie played on it once and was like, this isn't one of mine, but it looks like it. And I've got a pre-CBS one. Now, not that I would put a kill switch on a Telecaster from 1960, but I don't have a kill switch on either telly. So I use this guitar, which is a custom-built Music Man Axis Super Sport that I've had now for about 20 years. And this was built slightly different to the production ones that were available at the time. It has a 5-way selector, the fixed bridge, and the piezo. And it came, they put the Damasio DLX Plus in the bridge because I had it on another soap bar Music Man. I was looking for that sort of hot rail-esque pickup that I have on my tellies, which is actually the same pickup as I have in my black Music Man, the single coil one, and the Silhouette that I just use. It's the Fast Track 1. I really love that pickup. It's the Fast Track T in the telly. But I had the DLX Plus put in it. Now, it's quite hot, but because I've got the splitting capabilities, I use it most of the time split, and then it gives me the sound. But having that pickup, it will give you that sort of fat, raw tone that I was thinking it's not going to be the same as the lace sensors, but the lace sensors are pretty high output pickups. Now, the reason why I use this guitar is because of the piezo switch. If you don't engage it, it works like a kill switch. It's not as easy to operate. Trying to do the stuttering rhythms that Jonny does on this track without pushing your finger down, doing it like that was quite hard to achieve in the performance, but it was a way round it. So this is very much my interpretation of the parts. And we'll talk about some of these specialist parts as they come up. In terms of amps, Jonny used a Vox AC30, but we kind of really know him for using that Fender 85 combo, which is a transistor combo. And it was the combination of that guitar with the Shredmaster that gave him that really gnarly tone. So once again, I'm going to be using the Governor. Now, the main part that we hear throughout this track features a phaser and a delay effect. I'm not too sure what delay he used, actually. I must admit, probably the Space Echo, I would imagine. But the phaser was the small stone phaser. So once again, I'm using the Eventide H90. I'm using phaser, which is running into the front of the amp, and I've got a sort of analog vintage style delay, 2 different delay times, and that's being added in stereo after the Cab Clone IR. I'm splitting this pickup and using the neck pickup, so I'm sort of going for that classic, almost middle position you get on a telly. and I'm using the Wampler Ego 76, again just blending a bit of parallel compression in. Anyway, let's have a listen to what Jonny plays. This is section 1, and this is the little picked arpeggios that he plays in the first verse. Here we go. Okay, for that part, you're outlining the little melodic phrase played around that G minor 6. You're sort of outlining what the G minor 6 to the B flat over A to the B flat. You're outlining or embellishing, should I say, what Thom Yorke is playing. So we're playing this figure. Then we drop down, play it an octave lower. And then we just move up by a semitone to that E flat note to outline the change back to C minor. Then that figure appears again. Okay, and you're just bending that D note up a semitone to the E flat and back, and then we conclude. So that gives you an idea of the parts that Jonny plays in the verse. Now let's take a look at the chorus. And once again, I've used a little bit of sort of artistic license with this because it's really hard to hear all of the supporting sort of picked notes that he's playing in between the melodic theme. He's essentially doubling Thom Yorke's acoustic part, but watching that Jools Holland performance, his hand is doing a lot more than just going, which is how I always thought it was played. When you watch, he's constantly strumming, so he's picking out different notes within the chord, just adding to that rhythm. So some of those notes jumped out on the isolated, some of them didn't. So I've sort of come up with a part based on what he's playing live. I listened to that as well and could really pick out some parts. So again, this is kind of my interpretation of the live version and the studio version. So let's play through the chorus. Here we go. So we start off with the G minor 6th chord, and we're just pedaling off of those high register notes, pedaling off of notes in between that melody. So you get... And then down to the F major 7th with the added 6th. Again, watching Jonny play it live, he's fretting it in a similar way. Okay, then we have the E 7th chord. The D over F sharp and then back round again. And then we have a slightly different arpeggio pattern on the E7 chord the final time. And then that leads us into the second verse. Okay, now on to verse 2. And Jonny plays a sort of a complementary counter riff against the part that Thom Yorke is playing. So let's play through that first of all. Here we go. Okay, so we start off with the chromatic rundown. Playing that C minor chord in the open position, just playing the B string, the top E, and the open G. It's a lovely voicing for a C minor in the open position. Then we play the open D, the top two strings, and then the... So you get this. Then we have the F9 chord, open G, and then back to the root note. Put those together. Then we drop down to the G minor chord. Then we jump up. Okay, take care with that position shift. Back to the G minor. Let's play through the first half of the second verse. Okay, around the second time, it's pretty much the same on the repeat. But when we get to the F9 chord, we go... So following on from the open G, we add the A note, and then it's back round. Really take care with those position shifts. It's quite hard to get up to the top of the neck from that sort of open position. And you can really sort of see on that live video that Jonny's sort of really traversing the neck from the lower positions all the way up to the 15th fret. Okay, so now it's on to the second chorus, and we have another part. I'll play it through first of all. Here we go. Okay, once again, we're outlining the chord progression, but with a slight variation. We're just always pulling off from the first fret to the open top E. So we have... We repeat that exact pattern, but we just drop that B flat down to A over the F major 7 added 6th. Now we have the E 7th. There's a little climb up there. I really like that part. Then we go around again. Okay, and then we have a slight variation on the rhythm of the E7th chord. We're going... Okay, so that concludes the guitar parts played by Jonny during section 1. Okay, so now we're on to section 2. And to start off with, Jonny's parts are quite subdued. We're going to be doubling up that picking riff. A couple of times we play. So it's exactly the same riff played by the acoustic guitar, but you're only playing a small fragment of it. But obviously using some tight palm muting, when you pick the tempo up with the delay, it gives it a nice doubling effect. So So now we're on to the first sort of driven heavy part of section 2. And for this part, I've sort of combined some parts. I'm going to play a part we've already seen. I sort of took Jonny's part and put it together with Ed's part. So you would play what Jonny plays with the kill switch and then go into the chords. So I'm going to play around exactly, or pretty much what I transcribed as much as I can remember. So let's check it out first of all. Here we go. Okay, so to kick things off, we got those slides. And then now the next part caused me considerable amounts of pain. I researched this so much. Every video I watched, the camera wouldn't really fully show what was going on. Apart from the Jools Holland one, where the camera for a split second shows Jonny's left hand. And that was the clue. On all the other live performances, you'd hear this effect, but you wouldn't see it. Now, I watched some other performances that people have done, and there's some like real Jonny Greenwood fans out there who've got the guitar and they stand like him and they pick like him and they play great. But a lot of them were bending that note and sliding to get the pitches. When you watch the Jools Holland thing, you can clearly see that his hand is still. He's holding the note. He might bend it ever so slightly, but he's not bending all the way up to practically a G pitch. So I messed around with this for a while because I thought about bending it. Also, you need the kill switch, and I'm sort of doing it with the pickup toggle switch. So you're kind of going like this. So there's a little bit of guesswork, but I did it with the whammy pedal. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's how Jonny did it, but the bend is smooth, and the bend sounds smooth on the original recording, and it sounds smooth on the live version. It's too kind of sort of like a pitch wheel for him to be bending it by hand and sliding. And if you watch the Jools Holland performance, at that point, you see his hand like that. And if he was bending up to that note, you know, he's going to be some serious string bending. You would see him pulling the string down. See, he's not doing that. He might have used a different pitch shifting device, but I've only, apart from obviously the even side, but the whammy pedal is the only one that I can operate in this way. So unless I connected of course, an expression pedal, but I've got a whammy pedal, so it's easier. That's kind of what he's doing. So, like I said, I might be wrong. Probably am. There's probably some other crazy effect, but he's definitely not string bending. He's definitely not sliding, because you see him on Jools Holland tapping the kill switch on the guitar, and his hand is left still. It's definitely been done by effect. Okay, after that, on the original recording, let's turn my pedals off, turn pedals on. On the original recording and also live, he goes. And he's live, he's doing all this sort of pitch shifting stuff with the kill switch. On the original, he's just going. And he just leaves that note to sustain. But for the purpose of performance and playing it on your own, I tagged on Ed O'Brien's chords. So you'll go. So I've kind of mixed those two parts up. And on the rundown, I ended a little bit early because you're then going to have to get into the start of the solo. So have a little bit of play around with that section, see what works for you. Maybe you want to hold that C note. Sorry, I'll find the right note in a minute. maybe you want to hold that C note, mess around with your kill switch and your whammy, or just let the note sustain if you don't have a whammy and a kill switch, and then go into the solo. You know, obviously that will work, but like I said, I showed Ed's chords on the same stave. I just kind of made a complete part. Okay, so now it's time for the first guitar solo. I'll attempt to play it through for you. Here we go. Okay, that solo's really demanding to do, and to try and get the right sort of way that he does it, he pretty much throws himself at the guitar. You're starting off by sliding in from the 4th fret, and then you're just playing the 20th fret, but then you bend up with the 1st finger by a whole tone, and then you continue that picking. The next lick is a bending lick. You're going to fret the 20th fret of the top E and bend up on the G and the B, playing this little sequence at the 22nd fret. So you go... Finish off with the open E, and then you're going... Okay, so you've got this little pattern between the 19th and the 20th, slide off, and there's a couple of B strings. And then we have this really angular phrase. Pay attention to the open B strings in between each phrase. And then we conclude with that little run down into the F major chord. So a very, very aggressive solo. I think this is a real sort of stamp of the times. You know, it's an aggressive anti-Guitar Hero solo, but at the same time, there's a lot of skill going on within it. So it's not your traditional type of solo. You know, Johnny's got that, you know, that fast tremolo picking, but he's not, I guess I'm trying to play it cleanly, which is really hard when you're playing this isolated and in this manner, and with this sound as well, I hasten to add. But you know, he's sort of catching other strings. He's almost strumming it. So there's a certain amount of aggression and real sort of passion to the solo. So try not to play it too cleanly. You know, give it a little bit more attitude. So now we're on to the final bit of guitar from Jonny Greenwood. This is the closing bit of the song. This is section 4. And for this section, we're going back to that riff in A, that picking riff and the 7/8 chords. But for this section, Johnny's pretty much soloing to the end. Now, on the original recording, he used a Mutronics mutator, which gives you these very exaggerated envelope filter sounds. It has a really unusual sound. You get these very dramatic sweeps, and that really plays a big part of the sound on the original. Live, he would use a Dodd envelope filter, and he'd be literally twisting the knob with his foot as he's playing to try and emulate some of the sounds and sweeps and change the sound. This is a very hard and unique tone. So what I've done, I'm using all H90 here. I've got the 2 effects running in the front of the amp within the H90. I'm using the sculptor effect, which is giving me like an envelope filter sort of style mild drive. And then I'm going into the weed whacker, which is an overdrive, and I've got quite an aggressive overdrive, and that's after the envelope filter. I didn't want to go from the governor into the envelope filter. That's the wrong way round. So the tone isn't the same. It's an approximation of the tone. You know, what are you going to do? I haven't got one of those mutators, so I'm sure some of you out there will be able to get this tone a bit better. But yeah, you know, it's kind of ballpark. Okay, so we kick things off with the riff. The acoustic guitar starts the riff, picks up the tempo from the previous section. We come in with a slide, and into the riff, but we're playing it an octave higher. So it sounds like this. Okay, once again, you can hear I did the little bending thing there using the whammy pedal. Again, I'm not sure if that's how he did it, but when you watch him doing it, he's not really bending. His hand's staying still. So I've done it that way. Some of you may go, no, that's not how you do it, but it's no rules. You know, that's how I've interpreted the sound and the part. And the riff is being played an octave higher, so. And I've gone for a little bit more of that sort of slappy single coil tone. Then we're into the final solo, so I'll play it through for you first of all. Okay, that's a really, really bizarre and angular and a very awkward solo to play. We start off with this angular mixture of major sevenths and octaves. We're going... So they're all major seventh. Wow. Octave, and that repeats. The next time... Then we have our... Now it gets difficult here. We've got these unison bends on the B and the G. Then we're going... But on the recording, he's sort of tremolo picking, sort of attacking it with strums, and then he drops down. Then we have this really odd bend, but this is being really affected with the mutator. So live, he does some kill switch stuff, but you're sort of bending up so that the G goes up 2 whole tones, or that's how I've interpreted it. So you go... You can see him bending up, but he's using the kill switch live. But like I said, with that mutator, it's doing lots of weird stuff. Then we have the unison bends again. Again played with the tremolo picking. Then we drop down. Then we climb up with the unison bends. Gets pretty hard when you get up the top there. And then we have this final figure. Pay attention to the open G string that occurs every so often on the lick. So yeah, a very, very unorthodox and bizarre guitar solo, but it just adds to that sort of angst and attitude, and it's just another texture. It's just such a fantastic solo. Okay, so there you have it. Quite an in-depth and involved lesson today. This is my interpretation. It's a really hard song to replicate, especially trying to do some of the effects and sounds. I think I'm kind of maybe 85%, 90% there. I'm still unsure about the whammy with that bending note, but I don't know how else he would have done it because, as I said, if you watch the video, his hand is not moving. Watch that Jools Holland video and you will really see what I mean. It really zooms in close. So, and yeah, with the envelope filter, that again was quite a hard sound to get. And if I'd have put it on a expression pedal out of the H90, I probably could have done a lot more with it, but how far are you going to go for a YouTube video? But don't forget to download the tab, and if you don't already, please subscribe. That's it from me. Take care. Bye for now.